just magic. It's magic. It's right in our group. Everything. We ain't got to share it no more, PJ. It's right to it.
That was great. Amazing.
Yeah. All right. All right. Oh, good. We're good. You guys ready to go?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the My Side of the Block podcast. If today is your first time listening, we want to say welcome. Make sure you guys check us out, not only on the video right here, check us out on YouTube at Stoop Knockout, and check us out on audio at all your favorite podcasting apps. Just look for My Side of the Block podcast. Now today, guys, I can't tell you how excited I am for this episode. I've actually been waiting to do this episode since before fantasy football started. That's right. We didn't even make our fantasy football list yet, and I already wanted to do this episode because I went to get a t-shirt that I had made, and it ended up being an hour and a half conversation about this topic. And ever since that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I've seen it every week during the NFL, and I'm ready for it. Now, what I want to talk to you guys about today, what I'm not going to talk, but what our guests here are a guy who beat our co-host in the debate, my man Steve Taylor. Welcome to the house, man. We are glad to have you here, bro.
Listen, man, I'm happy to be back, and just get your popcorn ready. This episode is going to guarantee to be shocking.
Absolutely, dude. Guys, if you don't know what we're talking about already, then you have been listening to our episodes because we said in the last three, we've been posting in our group, The Stoop Life. Check that out on Facebook. We're going to be talking about the NFL being rigged. Now, I know a lot of you out there don't really think the NFL is rigged because you want to think it's, just it's all glory by God that they won't do that to you guys. But I hate to tell you this. It's pretty rigged. It's pretty rigged. And if you listen to my podcast all year, TJ, you know it. I say it every week when I make my picks. No guarantee because the NFL is rigged. But today, listen, we aren't just coming to you guys as fans because I'm mad the Eagles didn't win or PJ's mad that Green Bay didn't win. Steve's going to come to you guys with facts, information, and stuff that's going to blow your goddamn mind. So I don't even know where we get started with this. I'm just going to give it to PJ. If you want to say any opening statements, I'm just going to sit here, drink my drink here, and I'm just going to listen to Steve go off. So let's get it.
Listen, the NFL is 110% rigged. There's no way that the Hail Mary should even been happening. I'm gonna let Steve get to it, but I've been holding in the Hail Mary for 8 years. So you understand, if a guy can catch the guy who caught the ball in his chest and it's a touchdown, then what the fuck are we doing here? I guess that's a play, right? Hail Mary, right? Terrible refing. Why are you hiring these refs off the street that don't know shit? But I'm gonna let Steve, do it. My former opponent, I'm gonna let him handle this. Y'all call him Steve. I call him Stevie Clutch. So show him why.
Oh man, I appreciate that. The first thing I want to say has nothing to do with football. One of the best life lessons and one of the best quotes from any movie came from the Players Club. And it wasn't about not being a stripper. It was literally about, Lisa Ray, her name was Diamond in that, in case y'all never saw that. She's, doing her night job. And she's in a college student. She falls asleep in class. And the professor told her, he tried to catch her, nodding off. And she answered the question and she got it right. But the quote, which was something that was very profound to me, was don't trust anybody's research but your own. Now, that doesn't mean that other people don't do thorough research. What that just means is trust but verify. So I'm saying that to say this. I don't have a reason to lie to you. But if you don't believe what I'm saying, you can check it. And then I did find some links to articles CBS articles, all different types of stuff, verifiable sources. You just got to cross-reference stuff. And I'm just going to present it to you, and you take it for what it is.
So I got one question. I got one question for you.
What's up?
Did you go on, are your sources from Wikipedia? Because they don't count. I know they're not. Bro. I trust it. I like the fact that you just pointed out, do your own research. And
my goodness.
That's why I did my research. I have some stuff here, and I don't even want to get started. I'm gonna let you take it over today. Today you ain't the guest. Today's your podcast.
I'm gonna post some links. There's not gonna be any Wikipedia links. Now, what I will say is this: like, even if you find something off of Wikipedia, 'cause I know it has this like it leaves a nasty taste in everybody's mouth. It doesn't mean you
Yeah.
can't find valuable. Your research can start there, but it shouldn't end there. Put it to you like that. You can find like obviously I'm not lying about people's names and birth dates and stuff like that, but take that as a point of reference and then go do some real digging. So that's all I'm gonna say. But no, no Wikipedia links. So the first thing I think is important. If you don't understand the past, you're not going to understand the present, and you're not going to understand the future. So the first thing we have to establish is what is the NFL's history. The NFL's history is this. It's obviously starting in Canton, Ohio. That's why the Hall of Fame is there. That was a little over 100 years ago, back in 1920. And one thing that was just interesting to me that I'll bring up is since for the past 78 years consecutively, one of the biggest networks, which is CBS, has had a TV deal with the NFL. And the reason NFL
Yeah.
games pretty much went to broadcast TV was following World War II. So it was a difficult time. There was a lot going on in society, and basically we needed a new, modern version of like a gladiator game, something like you would get at a Roman Coliseum, something to take your mind off of the day-to-day pressures and the stress of life. So that's essentially the foundation of the league and why it's not just a radio program or whatever the case may be. So now that we understand, okay, this is the foundation. This is when it started. This is where. Now we have to look at some of the key figures in the foundation of the league and it growing and expanding. So one of the key people is his name was Charles Bidwell, and he actually happened to be the early financier of the Chicago Bears. He was the majority owner from 1930 to 1933. Eventually ended up purchasing the team that became the Cardinals, which are the Arizona Cardinals today. And he's been dead since 1947, but the Bidwell family still actually owns that franchise. So it was, imagine something that was purchased, 100 years ago, basically, and is worth at the time was worth maybe a couple $100, which even if you include for inflation is worth a couple $1,000 to a multi-billion-dollar commodity. This is a big deal. This is big business, and there's a lot of money involved. But here's the interesting thing about him was he was a known gambler at the time, and he actually had connections to Al Capone's mob. So again, this was not a person that was quote unquote in it for the love of the game or the sport. These were guys that were basically, I'm not saying they were like drug dealers or street hustlers, but these were guys that were into betting, horse racing, all these other different kind of things. And this was a new commodity that you can buy in cheap and make some money off of. So the betting influence has always been a part of the foundation of the league, but more specifically, the owners of the league. And this is just one person. So I spent a lot of time on him, but I'm going to just kind of summarize and get to some of the other points. So another prominent figure in the early foundation of the league, his name was Arthur B., aka Mickey McBride, and same thing. He was the founder of the Cleveland Browns, and not only was he connected to the mob as well, he was actually the head of the mob's gambling newspaper called the Continental Racing Wire. So not only was he involved with NFL as far as you can say rigging games or just a part of the gambling aspect of that, he was a part of what was deemed at the time to be one of the biggest threats in the whole country with the betting and gambling newspaper that was going out to the masses. So this is some of the founders, and again, his family is still connected to the same Cleveland Browns that we have today. Another prominent figure, his name was Timothy James Mara. The Mara family still owns the New York Giants. He was an actual bookie. So when he acquired the Giants at the time that he, purchased the team and became the owner, he was a bookie. Do I need to even go into detail about what a bookie is and what they mean to gambling? Like, let's I don't even think that requires much explanation. And especially where he was at in New York, think about New York City, especially at the time, especially with everything that was going on. This is a person who owned a franchise and their family still owns it. And this is big business. So if you think that they completely gotten rid of their grandfather or maybe great grandfather's ways at this time, I think that would be very foolish and you would be sadly mistaken. Um, Now, just to bring up something that's a little bit more modern, this person, his name was Edward John the Bartow Sr. So he was the original, or not the original, he was somebody who purchased the 49ers in the late 70s. So he also purchased, or at least the family as a unit, also purchased the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they owned the Penguins from 77 to 91. And same thing, the Bartello family still owns the 49ers, but here's what's so interesting. So he purchases them in the late 70s, 77, I believe is the exact time. And then immediately after purchasing them, he changes management around. They become the dynasty of the 80s. But here's the interesting thing. So he eventually passes away. His son gains ownership over the team. So Ed Jr. was a part of a gambling ring. So he bribed a Louisiana governor $400,000 for a riverboat casino license. And long story short, what ended up happening was the guy who was the governor that he bribed, he got 18 counts of fraud, including money laundering, mail fraud, wire fraud, etc. He spent 2 years in jail. The person who financed him spent no time in jail. Ed Jr. just basically got $1 million fine, which is, you know, nothing compared to his net worth. And he didn't do any jail time at all. And then interestingly enough, this happened in 98. So what happens is once the whole scandal came out, 99, he couldn't be directly a part of the team. He passes ownership on. But interestingly enough, and very recent, in 2020, exact date would being February 18th, Trump actually gave him a presidential pardon as well. So when people start thinking about how does this really affect the bigger picture? Are there other people involved? Is it too many moving parts and too big? The thing about it is you only have to have a couple people connected to move mountains, right? If you're able to get a presidential pardon for something that happened decades ago, you didn't even spend any time in jail, and the person that you finance, they're the person that has to do all the time. It's easy for you to keep, your hand in a pot from afar and do things that are going to manipulate the money. So people have to understand that this is big business. And, we see just with regular stuff, people get into fights, people shoot and kill people for a couple $100 that you might owe somebody in the street, or you're in the club, this person stepped on my J's. What do you think these people are out here doing when billions of dollars are on the line? So we have to stop being naive about that. And I'm going to get into the NFL more because if you ask the average person, hey, how is this possible? It can't be rigged, so on and so forth. One, they didn't do any research, so they don't even know the kind of stuff I'm bringing up because, like, I was shocked to know, like, wait, an NFL owner was able to start a team and he has connects to Al Capone. Like, this is one of the most notorious gangsters in American history. This isn't like, some local drug dealer or somebody who thinks he's a kingpin. This dude was powerful. So for him to have any connection to something that's supposed to be this large commodity and there's supposed to be all this integrity and stuff. I'm like that to me was very telling. But people will say, well, who cares about that? Even the stuff that happened more recently, that was the late 90s. This was, in the 30s and 40s and how long ago. But here's the thing. The NFL as a business right now, and this is the part where some people might notice, some people might not, but the NFL as a business is not technically a competitive sports league. The legal standing is under is sports entertainment. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's talk about what's in the sports entertainment bracket. There's only three things. Roller derby, nobody gives a crap about that. So they should rig their stuff just for people to watch it at all. And the only other thing that's in it is pro wrestling, like the WWE. Do I need to tell you that when Stone Cold beat the Rock at WrestleMania? Do I need to tell you that they knew the outcome of the match beforehand? Now, does that mean they're scripting every single wrestling move and everything? No, there's still people. They still have some charisma and they're able to kind of freestyle somewhat. But if you got like put it to you like this, if they're going to break the Spanish announce table, they know about it. If somebody's going to win on the Stone Cold Stunner, is he going to hit him over the chair and the ref's not looking? They know about that type of stuff. So it's the same thing. It's not saying that every single play is scripted and they're giving each other hand signals and doing stuff. No, all you can have somebody can make a spectacular play that they're maybe not supposed to make, and a ref could throw a flag and it's negated and the actual and fans that are watching it say, well, that didn't look right or that's a phantom call, doesn't negate the fact that at the end of the day, whatever they want to happen, whatever they don't want to happen, it's all under their control. and there's a reason for the manipulation. So I I don't want to keep speaking and not have you guys have some input. So there's anything you wanted to you speak on or something I just brought up that was kind of like shocking or that you want to talk about before I go to on to a next point?
Yeah. The only thing I want to say about what you said is, you mean to tell me that they knew they were going to go through the Spanish table? Yeah, no, but for real, like I like what you said there, because like, in wrestling, they know the outcome. They know they know the major plays that are going to be made. That's why I try to tell people with NFL that's what they do. And the fact that you brought up NFL entertainment industry, a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand the fact that it got underneath that frame of entitlement of an organization, corporation, where no other sports league is under that. And that right there just says a lot. And it dates back to what you said about Al Capone being involved. Like, I know it's the 1930s, but when you're starting off sports, like when TV's banned, that's a huge deal, man. Like, that's a huge deal. And then, like you said, Trump giving the guy a pardon. Like, why is he giving the guy a pardon if it didn't have something to do with, something important in American history or something along those lines, which obviously the NFL does. So I honestly never knew any of that. So
the NFL is under sports entertainment. That's very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. And the fact that the NFL has mob ties, I'm fully sold, because baseball has mob ties. Boxing, we all know what boxing has done with the mob. My sport has been nothing but heavily involved with the mob. I know all about it, right? So the NFL to be having Al Capone tied in is crazy. It's nuts. I'm interested 100% now.
Yeah,
you say I used to have to pull my eyes perk right up.
The only thing I want to use clarify a little bit more, because I still don't fully understand it. Like, how did the NFL become under an entertainment, organization, corporation, and none of the other leagues were able to?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, like, why didn't the other leagues do that? They did.
I mean, there's some things about the NFL that I know that I don't fully understand. Like, for instance, like somehow, some way, the NFL is it's a nonprofit business, and when you think about what it entails and the type of items that they say, I got on the jersey, I got a jersey, I got a hat on. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how they were able to legally pull that off. But the NFL in 2022 and whenever for however many years has been considered a nonprofit business, and I don't even know how something like that's possible.
Nonprofit, wow. That's actually interesting.
Shit, since when? Shit, they've been doing them, but profiting off us.
Right there. Right. It's crazy. You're gonna get into that a little bit more. I already know, but do you think them being the entertainment has anything to do with that antitrust exemption that JFK signed back in 1950 or 61 or whatever?
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to save that part for later, but I think it goes to what you're saying right now. So since 1973, the NFL has maintained a blockout policy that states that home games cannot be televised locally if it has not sold out 72 hours prior to the start time. So before that, NFL games actually basically, they're the only major professional sports league in North America that, up to a certain period of time, required you to sell out your arena to have local rights. So what it tells me is that there's clearly there's a connection between viewership, ratings, advertisements, and money. So at the end of the day, if you have an obligation to say, you know what, the only reason I'm going to pay you, well, you got to pay like $30 million for a Super Bowl commercial or something crazy.
Yeah, some crazy.
Like every 30 seconds is like $1 million or something like that. You have to have a strong connection to an audience, right? So they look at it as, you know what, if we sell this out in 72 hours leading up to the game, it's going to be a nice environment. You're going to have a bunch of fans there. You're going to have like interest, right? And the more people you have looking at the game, the more things you can sell to them. Because if you really think about it, right, the NFL game is 3 hours long. Why? The actual game itself is a 60-minute game. So even if you say, okay, 60 minutes is the actual time, we could say maybe there's another 15 minutes of real time with just timeouts and stoppages, and then you do have a 15-minute halftime. So that would put it at the game's an hour. That would put it at an hour and a half. So even if you're doing commercials, you could still say it can squeeze into a 2 hour window if need be. But the reason it's three and a half hours is because they want to have at least a good hour to hour and a half of advertisement because that's what the whole purpose of TV is for advertisements and commercials. And I don't think people realize that. So when you have something that's a commodity that's that large, and speaking on commodities real fast, the NFL, I didn't I kind of assumed this, but I didn't know. So I had to pull some, do some digging to find this out. But NFL games, currently and have been for a very long time, the most lucrative and expensive rights to buying for any sport, and part of it has to do with the viewership. So that's always been a connection, and I think the turn really was the '60s, which is why I said I'm gonna bring this up now because before the '60s. America's pastime, baseball, was hands down the most popular sport in America. The '60s is really where you saw that turn and the changing of the guard from baseball to football and the stuff that you brought up, Bobby. Obviously, the TV deals. And then at that point in time, too, if you're talking about, we'll excuse the 20s because I would say the first decade, it's a learning curve, you're figuring things out. But from the 30s up to the '60s, now you've got a 3 decade window to like measure things and then do what you can to take it to the next level. So I think that was like the perfect time where, hey, we have all this stuff figured out. Boom, here's our next move. And then later in the same decade, that's when the Super Bowl starts.
Yeah, I agree with you. Uh, when he signed that deal, I was looking into it as well, and it dates all the way up till today. Like the league can still change what they want to be under organized, but when he signed
Right.
the sports broadcasting antitrust exception, and basically what it did, it allowed them to pretty much make their business entertainment and rig it. But the only ones that joined it was NFL. All the other sports league didn't change their associations or
Oh,
corporations.
you know
Nothing.
what? I just remember something. You know why they didn't do that? So the reason they didn't do that is because up until the year 2014, the NFL was the only network that had a So there's this law. So I guess I should bring the law first. There is a anti-siphoning rule, which is basically a law, and a lot of other teams could, other leagues could basically face some type of legal ramifications because at a certain point in time, anti-siphoning was considered to be unconstitutional. So in the USA, at least, it was introduced by the FCC in 1975, but the reason it didn't stay long term is because as soon as it was installed, basically in '75, they looked at it and said, "Yeah, we can't do this because it's unconstitutional. So we're not going to allow for this to happen." But somehow, some way, even something that's deemed to be unconstitutional, the NFL, in a sense, was given a presidential pardon as a league. And up until, like you said, modern times, 2014, this stuff was in effect.
I think a lot of it has to do with backdating to some of the owners that predated that started their teams that had gambling ties.
Yeah.
Now that
Oh,
you brought it
absolutely.
up, ties in.
Well, the thing about it too, and we'll never know this stuff 100% for certain, but just because you're gambling, as you know, doesn't always mean that you're winning. So if things don't go according to plan, or maybe try to double cross somebody or lie, they might look at it and say, "Yo, you owe me X amount of money, and we're not going to put hands on you or kill you so long as things go my way." So they might have had some debts they had to clear up, and it had to let things go for a certain amount of time until everybody was, happy or they got to a even footing on a negotiation.
Yeah, and that's true. I not like since you've brought it up, the how the owners and all the gambling, the racketeering, and all that. It's pretty crazy. Like I didn't know any of that. Like I'm pretty sure nobody knows that. And like it might not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but we know like PJ brought up boxing. Like it was huge, and it changed the sport how it is today. It changed how it's promoted.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like boxing, just in a bigger thing.
Well, it is.
I feel like that's what I'm listening to. That's what I'm listening to is a story about boxing right now. It's crazy.
Well, here's the thing too. So we know that the NFL is somehow a nonprofit organization, and we know that they're under sports
Blows my mind.
entertainment. So
Unbelievable.
I'm gonna make a lot. I'm gonna make a few wrestling parallels to kind of help drive the point home and to make it make sense. So the NFL is not a competitive sports league comprised of 32 separate entities that compete against each other and are their own business commodities. What the NFL is, like they say, it's the shield, right? So what exactly does that mean? It means that there is money that goes into a big pot that gets evenly distributed before any games or anything takes place. The majority of this money comes from the TV deals. So right now the NFL has a five network deal. I think it's like Amazon, Fox, NBC, ABC, and then ESPN. ESPN is basically Disney because Disney owns ABC, ESPN, a bunch of organizations. So the thing is, it varies year to year and it varies between contributions between each network. But before the season even starts, the NFL, like their house money, is anywhere between $8 to $10 billion, which is based off of the TV deal. So what happens is that depending on, we'll just say it's 10, right? Just to make a solid even number. So say you got $8 billion to start off, right? There's 32 teams. That money is evenly distributed to all teams so that they have a base footing as far as their net worth. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense because let's just be honest. I'm not saying it because I'm an Eagles fan. I think I'm better than anybody else or whatever the case may be. A lot of these organizations are crap. Detroit Lions, um, up until recently, the Bengals, the Browns, the Jaguars, the Jets. These teams stink. They constantly stink. They get high draft picks. They do nothing with them. They have poor upper management. You can't get stars to go there in free agency. They never have good head coaches. How in the hell is these teams worth billions of dollars when they stink? Even their fan bases have times where they're up and down and they don't even sell out the arenas. How do they make so much money? And it's because you can have a team that's been successful the past 20 years, like the Patriots. You can have a team that stinks like Cowboys, but still have great marketing and a great history behind them. And actually one of, if not the most valuable franchises in their box office. Like people, their fans will say, "How about them boys just are here?" And everybody else just wants to see them lose. So, but it's valuable commodity marketing and dollars wise. So you can have teams that bring in this extra revenue and they'll keep a lot of it and maintain it for their own team's rights. But it gets redistributed. All that money gets redistributed. So these teams that are barely cutting the mustard never make the playoffs unless you do fantasy football. Nobody knows these guys, their players and who they are and stuff like that. This is how they're able to maintain a level of being profitable and being great for business. So that's why when they have these expansion teams, the owners have to agree to bring it in, and it always has to be a number that is divisible by like either two or four, so that you can put them in divisions, and then now we can redistribute these dollars and still keep it, the appearance of being competitive. Because let's be real, these teams don't have a shot at winning. But if you notice, and I include the Cincinnati Bengals run this year, those teams from I guess you could say an entertainment aspect, the purpose they serve is the underdog role or that Cinderella story. You know what I mean? Like these teams never win, and then the Jaguars, it was like they were run to the NFL. I think it was what 95 or 96, and they were a good team, but nobody expected them to be good. And then suddenly out of nowhere, they make it all the way to the AFC Championship. They beat John Elway's Broncos and stuff like that. And then they did the same thing a couple years ago when they went all the way to the conference championship, but then this time they lose, to Brady and stuff like that. So these are teams that they have a purpose, just like any wrestler, that's a low tier undercard might, win the Royal Rumble, get the WrestleMania match, but loses, or doesn't even win the Royal Rumble. They just last in there for like 30, 40 minutes. They eliminate all these people. And he's like, oh, wait, it might be their shot. And they're getting close to going to WrestleMania. Maybe they'll be the champion. And then the heavyweight, superstar comes and knocks them out. So that's kind of like, and, some people are going to say that's speculative and stuff like that. But I always say time tells the truth. I'm a firm believer that, you can gauge history. And the thing about it, too, um, some of these teams, even though like the modern fans don't regard anything pre Super Bowl, like in the time of years past and decades past, some of these teams were quote unquote dynasties at the time, right? So as long as they were able to have their run, regardless of whether it was in a modern age or not, and they're still in the league and they are a commodity that makes money, the people that make money off of them don't care how good they are. Because even if you are a competitive person, we're all competitive. Would you stick around and say, "Hey, I've been running this team for 20 years, we stink, and I'm just going to keep at it for the money"? Like guys that are serious about being competitive want to win. But this is not a competitive league; it's a money league. So the reason they join and the reason they stay are for totally different reasons. So, what do you guys input on everything I just talked about?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I like you brought up the Jacksonville Jaguars because it brings you like people don't understand. It brings them back to the TV deals and the blackout. There was multiple times, if we remember, they were one of the only teams that got blacked out. Yet somehow they are still valued at a 20th overall in the NFL. Somehow value team. How's that possible? They've had 2 good years for the franchise.
You said they're valued at 20, so they're not even in 32nd place or like 30 or for nothing.
They are. Yeah, so they're on this list right here. They are they're number 25. They're still valued at 2.8. How? Like how? And what
the only thing I can think of is just because Florida is a state that there's no income tax, so maybe that has something to do with how they draw in money. So say $10 million made in Jacksonville is a solid 10, whereas though 10 million made somewhere like say like California, somewhere that has high taxes, might be like 7.5 or 8. So that's the only thing I can really think of because California does have a couple teams.
I also think like going back to the beginning of the guys that are the owners of the teams as well, like you just said, like competitor or make the money. Their owner doesn't give a shit about competing at all. He just brings money. I think that's another reason why sometimes they allow them to get to the game then just shit the bed. Like Saeed Khan, man, that guy probably puts a lot of money into the league,
Well, actually, I was going to save this for a different part. I was just going through my notes, but I'm going to bring up what you just said because this is something to me that's very interesting, and it has its course of history, dating back to the '60s, but specifically there's been a hard left that's been made since the year 2000. So I'm gonna bring this up because you just talked about a very good point about being brought to the bigger stage or the big game and not winning it. So check this out, guys. Since the year 2000, no NFL MVP has actually won the Super Bowl the same year they won the MVP award, and a lot of them actually do make it. So I know everybody was talking about, I'm not no high-stakes gambler or nothing, but I did make some money off of this year's Super Bowl, and I didn't hedge my bet. I was all in on the Rams. I didn't see any scenario that the Bengals would win, and they didn't. But and I was actually happy for Cooper Cup's sake that he didn't win MVP because, like I said, check this pattern out. So I don't know exactly what it means. I just know it's a consistent pattern, so it must mean something. So 2001, Kurt Warner wins his second MVP award. He makes it to the Super Bowl, obviously to play the Patriots. He loses. '02, Rich Gannon wins MVP. They play the Buccaneers. They get smoked. '05, Sean Alexander, he wins MVP, record-breaking season. He scored the most touchdowns ever at the time. He makes it to the Super Bowl, and in a notoriously poor referee game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they lose. Tom Brady, undefeated, 16-0 season, 2007, highest scoring offense in the history of the game at that time, led by Randy Moss. And they actually played the Giants in the shootout of a game and beat them. Somehow they lose to the Giants. And not only did they lose, they were averaging like I want to say like 33, 35 points a game. They don't even crack 20. And I remember Brady talking about in Super Bowl week how Plaxico Burress said that they were going to beat them and hold them to the 17 points, and he's laughing and saying, give us some credit for scoring points. We're going to, if we're going to lose, it's going to be in a shootout. Somehow, some way, it wasn't a shootout, and they lose, and it spoils the perfect season. Then you got 2009, Peyton Manning. And this part might be a little bit speculative. So, I mean, if people want to say it's a theory, it is what it is. '09 was a tight MVP race. So Peyton Manning wins it. He goes to the Super Bowl. They lose. The first half, they were in control of the game. I remember there was a wide open play that would have been a walk-in touchdown that he threw a dart to Pierre Garcon. He drops it. Then you get the Saints with their onside kick. But somehow, some way, the game was close, and then it kind of took a turn, and then obviously he throws the pick and stuff like that. But that MVP race, if you remember, was pretty tight between him and Drew Brees. Favre had a resurgent year. He was in the mix for a while, but I think he kind of eventually he wasn't going to win it, and you knew he'd be top probably three in voting, but he wasn't going to win it because the other guys just had better records. And as good as his numbers were, their numbers were still elite, and they were in their primes too. Peyton Manning wins the MVP award. Drew Brees wins the not as popular but very meaningful Burt Bell Player of the Year award. So the way I always looked at the Player of the Year is like the Player of the Year is kind of like award is kind of like what the MVP would be if there were no politics, and it's also known as the best player in the league that year. So a lot of times guys don't even win MVP but win that. So when a person, kind of doubles down and wins both, you know that they really had an awesome year. But anyway, Manning wins the MVP. Breeze wins the Burt Bell Player of the Year, which would you think is kind of strange? Like, why wouldn't one player just get both if it was a tight race? But because Manning got the MVP, they both make it to the Super Bowl. He loses. I would suspect that if it went the other way around, where either Breeze gets both or he wins MVP, I would suspect the Colts win that year. And like I said, this is just me pointing out a pattern. I don't know exactly what it means. We can talk all day about what we think. It's just a consistent pattern. And I'm gonna bring some other things up to correlate with that. But that's 2009. Again, another record-breaking year. Peyton Manning wins MVP, 55 touchdowns, rewrites the history book for the second time. They get to the Super Bowl, they get smoked against Seattle, and it was a disaster from the start. We know hike the ball once in the back of the end zone as a safety. They were losing the entire game, so nothing much to talk about there. Cam Newton, this is another one that's interesting. 2015, he wins MVP. 15 in one season. He's super Cam. He's doing whatever he wants to. He has a ridiculous game in the NFC Championship, and it just looks like they're the runaway favorites. He's in his prime. Peyton's over the hill. It looks like it's going to be his last year. He's playing bad because he's hurt. Somehow, some way, they lose the Super Bowl, and everybody. And I'm not. What I'm getting ready to say, I'm not making an excuse for Cam. I'm making an observation only. If the NFL is as rigged as we can prove that it is, and they knew to determine that they knew who's going to win the game, and that was kind of predetermined before they played. To me, that would explain a lot about the Cam Newton play, where he got a lot of flack for the fumble and not going for it. Because, like I said, you don't have to rig an entire game. There's just moments and different things. And one thing about Super Bowls, as we can see with this year's Super Bowl, regardless of how great you play as a defender, it is extremely hard for a defensive player to win Super Bowl MVP. But when you have a narrative, this is Peyton's last hoorah, the defense carried him, so on and so forth, and Von Miller is playing lights out, you want to make sure that you can carry that narrative by him having enough monumental plays that perceive to swing the game, whether they actually do or not. So when that happens and he doesn't go for the fumble, just me making an observation and watching it, saying, okay, there's probably some manipulation here. What's going on? He probably didn't think he was going to be that open to even have to go for the ball, and then because it was awkward. Even if I never rewatched that play, and when you watch it, the way everything happens, it's just weird. It's almost like he had a bad he was being a bad actor basically. So I'm just pointing that out just to say I don't know what happened, and I'm not sitting here making an excuse to say he shouldn't have went harder and went after the ball. I'm just making an observation to say at the end of the day, when MVPs make it, they don't win the game, and that was just a weird standout play, and everybody called it out because you're like you run the ball too. It's not like Cam's a big dude. He's bigger than Luke Kuechly. He's running guys over, trucking, front flipping into the end zone, and the ball's right there, and he doesn't go for it. It's just strange. But anyway, another MVP makes it to the Super Bowl. They lose. The following year, right after that, we have the biggest collapse in Super Bowl history. Matt Ryan wins the MVP. It was a tight race between him, Rodgers. Even Brady had a good year that year as well. But he wins it. And the NFC is very competitive. He has some pretty good playoff showings, especially for him to be known as a guy that doesn't perform at his best in the postseason and in critical moments. And somehow, some way, he makes it to that Super Bowl. He's up 28-3, and they lose. Now, I even watching that game live, I was like, it was just weird to me because I recall on the Patriots' first two scoring possessions, which were just field goals, there was consecutive third and long penalties where, they didn't complete a pass or they didn't have a positive play where the penalty got them basically continued to drive and then they eventually got field goals. But at the point that the notorious 28-3 mark with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, I remember watching that game and I went back and looked at the data. So at any point in time during a game, given the time that's left in the score, they always give you a win probability. Now, some of that has to do with betting, but it's just overall circumstantial stuff, right? So at that point in time, at that notorious 28-3 mark, the Falcons had a 99.7% chance to win the game. So to really crunch numbers and put that in perspective for you guys, 99.7% chance to win means if that exact same score in game was played out 1,000 times, there's only 3 times that they even project a team to have the ability to come back and win the game with that score in that amount of time. And we know how difficult it is to convert one. The Patriots had to get 2 touchdowns and get not one but 2-point conversions along with those touchdowns just to tie the game, which means the Falcons would either have to not get the ball and a turnover, something weird would have to happen, or they would, if they get the ball, they would have to get rid of it super quick. So one thing that stood out to me, everybody talks about this play, and it was a phenomenal play, the Julio Jones catch. I personally think that play wasn't supposed to happen, and now people want to say now you were sticking to the facts, you're going left, and you're getting all conspiracy theory on us. But here's the thing: I rewatched that footage a lot, and I rewatched it again this past week. So the weird thing to me about that possession. Matt Ryan's getting pressure. He's at, say, about the 40-yard line. So when he backs up to throw, he's right at midfield. He's on the logo. He throws it high outside to the sideline, which if you're trying to throw it away, which would be smart, you don't want a tip play. You don't want it to stay in bounds for the defender to have an interception, right? Julio, being the monster that he is, damn near snatches the ball from out of bounds, keeps his feet, both feet in bounds, and makes the catch, which puts them immediately in field goal range. They're at like the 25-yard line now. So if you need to go back and rewatch the game or rewatch the highlights, you can, like I said, verify everything I'm getting ready to bring up. So he's at the 25-yard line. There's going to be about a little more than 3 minutes left in the game. You're clearly in field goal range. You kick another field goal, you're going to be up 11 points with, say, 2.5 minutes left. That's literally impossible to overcome. You just don't have enough time. It's physically impossible. And even if you score a touchdown, you still need a 2-point conversion, and you need to get the ball back, and you got to score again. Very unlikely. But what happens is they call a timeout right after that Julio play happens, and then consecutive negative plays and penalties happen. I forget which one was which, but I think they did attempt to run the ball once. Then you get a holding call. It backs you up. Then after that, Matt Ryan takes a sack. Then after that, since he knows Julio is just this freak of nature that could just make catches unreal, if you look at it's now the third down play, and it's like third and long. It's like maybe third and 20. It might even be third and longer than that. I think Julio, and it might have been Muhammad. So it was Julio and another receiver lined up on the same side. Julio's lined up on the inside. The other guy's lined up on the outside. If you watch that play and it's third down, Julio actually does like a quick little slant and he breaks to the middle. He's wide open. Now, this guy who just made a spectacular catch for you and it was one of the major reasons you just win NFL MVP, wide open across the middle of the field. And on top of that, even if you don't get any positive yards and don't get back in field goal range, the clock's just going to keep ticking. You throw it to him, he's a beast, see what happens, let some time run down. Then you wait, even if you have to punt, let some more time run down, you pin him deep. He doesn't even look Julio's direction. He throws a high outside, but to the other side of the field where the other receiver was, incomplete pass. Now you're back essentially where you were before the Julio play happens, and there's just enough time to pull this comeback off, and then they get the ball. So I know I was a little long-winded with that particular game and circumstance, but I just want to highlight how more and more money that's being made off of these games, there's more interest that is being drawn. And I brought up a fact about that game too, which was surprising me because I didn't know this, but apparently that was Super Bowl 51, right? So Super Bowl 51 had there's a specific term for it. I want to bring up the exact name so I don't misstate how it's said. But basically, there is a closing segment to a game or a TV show in the final moments, and that game had the highest such viewership of anything in history. 117 million people were watching the closing segment of that show, aka football game, and that was the highest viewed thing of its kind in American TV history. So that monumental comeback wasn't just something that was great for the Patriots or Brady's legacy or something. There was a lot of money to be made off of that, and could you imagine how many people might have went in because at that point in time, sports betting wasn't legal everywhere. But imagine people that were watching a game at a casino or doing certain things that went and did live prop bets, and how much money, regardless of who you bet on, was exchanged just in say the fourth quarter alone. There's a lot of money that was being made. And then just to wrap it up, obviously after that, there's another MVP that made it to the Super Bowl, which was Tom Brady, 2017. Bergen, you already know what we did to that. That Super Bowl 52, we walked out the champs, and we were the underdogs, right? So on paper, our teams were pretty evenly matched. I would even say we were a little bit deeper, just looking at our running backs and the core of our defense. But they had already been there before. They had obviously beaten us in the previous Super Bowl, even though it's new regimes pretty much, except for the Patriots side with Belichick and Brady. He wins MVP. He's boosted up to be that guy, and he's the defending champion. So you think, is he really going to lose to Nick Foles in the backup? Like it'd be better, if MVP candidate Carson Wentz was in there, and he puts up all these numbers, but somehow, some way, they lose the game. So and since then, no MVP has made it back to the Super Bowl that same year. And then obviously there's a ton of other MVPs that just didn't even make it at all. But this is a consistent pattern. And like I said, do I know exactly what this means? No. But when is this pattern going to end? And the reason I brought it up for that time period is because obviously Dan Marino, 84, he wins MVP. They lose to the 49ers. But there was not this consecutive string of what I just went down like 8 MVPs that made it to the Super Bowl and lost. And a lot of these games, to be honest with you, too, were blowouts. Like, some of them were like I said, the Seahawks and Pittsburgh was poorly officiated, and that was just always a notorious game. But a lot of these games either weren't close or there was like some questionable things that happened that, looking back on it, caused these teams to either win or lose.
It's pretty wild. Yo, I'm actually like the fact that you brought up that the Peyton Manning one with the Broncos. I brought up earlier how do you think it's a coincidence that it was his 100th win in that Super Bowl? Like, there's so many other coincidences that happened, like you just brought up, that are like, really, are they coincidences or are they played out? And the fact that, like you stated, how many people were watching that Falcons New England game. Like I said, imagine how many bets are going on that. People going to the casinos or calling their bookie up, like the odds. Like it was a lot. And that's huge. Like people don't get how important gambling is for this. And like you brought up earlier, how commercials and all that type of stuff on TV, how that plays into making more money into the industry. And it's huge because like every time Super Bowl every time MVP makes it into like a conference championship or a Super Bowl, I bet against them every time. Like they never win, like ever. And a lot of crazy.
And that's why I said, to me, even though it would have been great for Cooper Kupp to be first MVP from the wide receiver position, that would have definitely raised some eyebrows for me and caught my attention as far as this year's Super Bowl. But like I said, the fact that he didn't win it and then he gets the Super Bowl MVP, because like I said, realistically, that could have still went to somebody like Aaron Donald. It could have gone a bunch of different ways. And even if you look at it, that last scoring drive, they're losing the game, clock's ticking away. You get a holding, you get a PI call, and then they keep moving. Now, I'm not saying that those calls were bad. What I'm saying is that they happen at pivotal moments because the T. Higgins play where he grabs Jalen Ramsey's face man, twists him, and then push him off. There's no PI called on that, but then you get consecutive penalties to kind of help the Rams drive and keep going, and then they eventually win the game. So, and then of course they're playing in their home stadium. That's another thing I didn't bring that up. So I want to say up until the Vikings in 2017, the year we beat them to go to the Super Bowl. If you were the host of the Super Bowl that year, you didn't even make the playoffs. Now, even if you think back to Peyton Manning, like this dude never gets hurt. His team always makes the playoffs. He's always top three, top five in MVP discussion. Somehow, some way, his neck surgery doesn't happen to a point where he's forced to miss the entire year. The same year the Colts host the Super Bowl and they have a new dome stadium. So I'm not saying that he didn't have an injury, and I'm not saying that it's impossible for certain medical decisions to be delayed for whatever reason. I just think it's hella ironic that it lines up that way. But then, since we've been dealing with COVID and the laws and social distancing and these mandates and everything, I just think it's quite ironic that the past 2 years we've been dealing with this, these are the only two times in history that teams that are hosting the Super Bowl actually get to play in their home stadium, and both of them won. So there's
Crazy.
interesting parallels.
I bring up another point. I remember when I'm not sure what year it was. I think it was 2000, maybe not 8 or 9. It was Cowboys host Super Bowl and Romo got hurt, and then they make the playoffs. Same thing. I'm sure if you look
Right.
back on it, so many of them.
Now I am going to say this. I am going to say this. Injuries do happen. Football is a contact sport, but the same way the WWE was fake. Because I remember it like it was a specific year. It was 1999, right? So The Rock he has this beef with Triple H, right? And supposedly he breaks his arm, and then now he's got this broken arm. He has to fight the Undertaker in a casket match. You know, there's no rules and stuff like that. So Triple H interferes. Of course, The Rock loses, and supposedly he has this broken arm. Now, Bobby, you maybe could speak to this better than I can. You know, being a guy who is all in on nutrition and health and different things. How in the hell somebody, even a guy who's in good shape, break their arm and say this happens? It was before WrestleMania, so say this happens no later than March, has a full recovery and is wrestling without a cast, wrestling at all, but wrestling without a cast come May and June. How is that even possible?
Listen, you can take as many amount of steroids that you want. It ain't healing you. The real question is, it never happened. He never broke his arm. He never broke his arm.
Right.
So, and the funny thing is, like bigger guys like that actually heal slower.
There you go.
Case in point.
So, like,
The reason I'm bringing that up is to say this. The NFL is in the same bracket as the WWE. It doesn't mean that they do everything that the WWE does, but if they can fake an injury for dramatic effect, for storyline purposes, stuff like that, I'm not going to speculate to who and when. I'm just going to say it's not above the NFL's integrity to do so because it's more believable being the fact that most people don't know it's a sports entertainment business and it's a contact sport.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, everybody likes to talk about the NFL integrity. You know, yet like they really don't have one because if you look back and you can just go watch the movie Concussion and look up the facts of what happened with the concussions in the NFL, and you clearly see they had no integrity at all. So like this doesn't blow my mind at all. Like it's
well.
You know.
Speaking of integrity, I'm gonna bring this up too because I just think that there's an interesting parallel with this. So obviously the NFL gets a majority of their money from the TV deals and stuff. If you recall the Kaepernick stuff with him kneeling and all of that, and that being a disturbance, that didn't really take mainstream heat until the 2016 season. That's when he started doing it. He got questioned about it, became a more prominent thing. The start of the 2017 season, the first, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks of the NFL, actually ratings perpetually dipped and got worse and worse. And it started off with like a 5% dip up to 15% dip in ratings compared to the beginning of the 2016 season. So, and we know Kaepernick obviously sued the NFL and won, and he can't discuss all of the details that was in that lawsuit. But I would suspect that the owners got together and definitely blackballed him out of the league because what he was doing affected the numbers and essentially was bad for business. That was the real reason. Because, like you said about them having integrity and different things, a lot of people don't also know this, but the NFL didn't actually televise or have this ceremony for the national anthem for every game until the 2009 season, where they actually signed a deal with the I think it was the it might have been the Army. It was, or maybe even it was some deal that they signed. My point being that they signed some deal with another entity, to basically give the appearance of being more patriotic, and that's where you started noticing the army fatigue jerseys and all the different gear coming out. So it was never about patriotism, integrity, stuff like that, respect for the flag. It was always a money play. So anything that's going to affect the money is going to be a problem, and the owners pretty much got together and unanimously decided that he's bad for business, so he's out, which is why he was able to take them to court and successfully win.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely true there, because like a lot of people thought, oh man, they're doing the army, and it was their way around to get people back into viewing it because they were losing it by the way they acted on the other things, which is true. Some people still don't look at it that way, and I don't understand it at all. Like, it's obvious. Like, why did they do it for the last 70 years? Not once, never. All of a sudden they do. Come on.
Well, see, here's the thing. At the end of the day, this is what people I think have to understand too, and I can see it just in my lifetime, and I think all of us can. Society, the standards within society, and the things that are deemed to be acceptable and unacceptable change. So because that evolves over time, what ends up happening is the way you make money and the way you cater to your audience evolves as well. So they're always going to do something that's going to be profitable and best for the money. So they feel like, hey, maybe we couldn't have done this in the past, it wouldn't have worked, it wouldn't have been as successful. We're going to build it up to a point, or just be aware and say, now's the time to do it. Let's do it. And then if it doesn't work, pull the plug on it and just revert back to something else that is working.
Absolutely, I agree. I want to touch base on this. We talked a lot about the NFL TV deal. TV deals. I actually have a number here. I just want to give you guys a number. You might have it, you might not, but just here, I had it. I lost it. Hold on. So the NFL signed a new TV deal. It starts next year.
Yeah.
And I want to know if you have information on that, because I want to get into a specific detail that I just found out about recently about the NFL and their negotiations with the TV deal, which might make some more sense on your Atlanta Falcons dismantling. Might put some more sense on why you're not lying about that.
So here's the thing. This is the information that I got from that. So the new TV deal is going to take place starting in the beginning of the 2023 NFL season. The partners are the ones that I mentioned before. So there's 5 major partners that are part of that deal, which are Amazon, CBS, ESPN/ABC, like I said, which is essentially Walt Disney, because that's who owns them, Fox, and NBC. The deal is going to take place. Basically, what's going to happen is through the course of that deal, all of those different partners are going to rotate times where they host the Super Bowl. So again, instead of trying to compete and have one network make all the money, they're going to all rotate years where they own it. And I do have a link to the article, so I'll probably just post that so people can check that out for themselves and see what years they're hosting and everything. But here's the thing: that deal is for $100 billion.
110.
Yeah, the exact number. But think about that. So let me just put this in perspective for people, right? For numbers, when you count money, are you just counting in numbers? There's hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions. This is a lot of money. This is not no chump change, and they're not going to leave $100 billion at stake. And oh my goodness, you get the Detroit Lions versus Jaguars in the Super Bowl. It's not happening.
No,
it's not happening.
The thing I saw about that TV deal. Yeah, it's actually, I think the actual number is 113 billion.
Billion.
Yeah, billion, guys. Billion.
With the B.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain on any of the other leagues, but I'm pretty sure it's a higher TV deal than all of the other leagues put together. Which, if you think about it, the NBA, the NHL, and the MLB play superior amount of games, yet NFL has more money in the TV deal. That's insane. It's insane.
Well, think about it. It's like what I was saying, Bobby. Think about the difference in time. So the average NBA game, think about it. So think about it from this perspective, right? An NBA game is 48 minutes of playing time. The NFL game is 60 minutes of playing time. You're talking about less than 20 minutes of actual sport time difference. But look how much longer the NFL program is. Just like I said, because they have about an hour and a half worth of commercials, hour and 20 minutes to an hour and a half. And this is, mind you, not including overtime, especially overtime in the playoff game, because now you have to determine the winner. So every time there's a stoppage or timeout, whatever the case may be, you're going to get additional commercial time. So it's all about that ad space in the audience. So if you say, hey, you know what, we have more ad time to sell you to a bigger audience, you basically can run up the numbers to whatever you want it to be, and they're going to agree to do it because they know it's worth their time.
It's crazy. I was actually looking more into that TV deal. I know off the TV deal, each team is getting about 321 million, and you brought that up earlier. So you guys can go look that up and see how much money and why these franchises are being driven up. And on top of that, when I was looking it up, in 2020, the league had 42 of the 50 most watched programs on TV that year.
Oh my God.
So we need to pause on that because this is what people have to understand. Again, the NFL is not a competitive sports league, so the way that it views each game is the equivalent of an episode of a series, right? So if you go on Netflix and you say season 1 of whatever show you're watching, episode 3, this is the way they legally categorize each game. So they don't even look at it as a contest. They look at it as a show. They look at it as, a performance. And speaking of which, because we brought up when the NFL, has some legal things. Here's the time the NFL actually won a lawsuit. So this is a fun fact for you guys, and you can look this up. And I think I have an article that I have ready to go, but if not, I'll find it and post it. So there was a Jets fan that was a season ticket holder. So once the whole Spygate situation came out involving the Patriots, obviously they pay the Jets twice a year, and he's a season ticket holder. So if it happens, say over the course of 5 years, he's looking at it like, hey, these games, these guys were caught cheating, which means they had a competitive advantage, and therefore I feel like I should be compensated. He was, not just apparently he wasn't just a regular season ticket holder. He spent some money, right? He spent a good amount of money. He felt like, hey, if my team didn't have a competitive chance to win, I feel like I've been rigged and my money was put to waste. So I'm going to sue the NFL and the Patriots for the act of cheating to compensate me in the court of law. And you know what happened? He lost. He lost his lawsuit. And the reason why he lost his lawsuit, again, going back to sports entertainment, what they said is basically, hey, you know what? You were at a live event. You went to WrestleMania. You went to SummerSlam. You went to the Royal Rumble. And as long as you were there, the ticket that you had access to was not to a competitive sports game. It was to sports entertainment. So in the name of entertaining you, in the name of making nonprofit money somehow, we can rig the outcome in the court of law. And they held their hat on that and they won. The Jets fan lost. So that was a big eye opener to me. Now his name is Carl Mayer, Carl with a C. And this is what the quote was in defense of the NFL. This is what one of their statements was. At best, he possessed nothing more than a contractual right to a seat from which to watch an NFL game between the Jets and the Patriots, and this right was clearly honored. So what that basically means for people that maybe are unclear about the legal ramifications of that, legally we can do whatever we want in on that arena. And as long as you were physically there and you got to witness what happened, you can't sue it. There would be like the equivalent of him suing the NFL because they didn't have a competitive advantage would be the equivalent of a fan suing Vince McMahon at the WrestleMania where Brock Lesnar beat the Undertaker, said the Undertaker has this streak, he wasn't supposed to lose and he lost. So I think I demand a refund because I came to watch the Undertaker at WrestleMania. I came to see him win because he always wins. And they're like, well, we can predetermine the outcome. So as long as you were there and you got to witness the match, it doesn't matter.
That's unbelievable.
You got something to say?
Yo,
what you got to say? I feel like you hold something in.
Like, what the? As long as you're there, it doesn't matter. Like it's like, wow. Oh,
unbelievable. Yeah, when I looked that up and I saw that, and like I said, I didn't look up the whole thing on it. I knew you would have it. But the fact that they said you bought a seat to the stadium, you bought a ticket to the stadium, They can do whatever they want with the game, and they actually won with that in court. And I was like, "Yo, it's the WWE. It's literally the WWE."
It is.
100%.
Well, check this out.
WWE with football pads on.
So I like to like I said, to me, time always tells the truth, and especially now, when the course of history is changing right in front of our eyes, and I got to witness a lot of the stuff firsthand. I'm not like the thing about studying history, because I love to study history in all capacity, all walks of life. But the thing about it is, one thing you don't get from studying history is the current state of mind. You have to literally research the mentality of the people, or have that OG or somebody alive during that time to give you. I understand this with the history book. It's telling you here's what it's not, or here's what the mentality was of the time, the current state of mind. So being able to live through a lot of the stuff, I can see it. I don't have to have like a recall or refer to somebody else. But check this out, guys. So Roger Goodell became the commissioner of the NFL in 2007, right? But here's the thing: the first 40 Super Bowls only had 11 one-score games, meaning majority of them were blowouts, or in the winding moments of the game, the contest was not up for grabs. So out of the first 40, you got 11 games that were one-score games, right? So since Roger Goodell has taken over the NFL in 2007, we have had 9 Super Bowls in that 15-year span that were one-score games, with majority of them coming down to the last play. And I can run through them all and tell you, like, I remember them. Like, obviously, the first time the Patriots lost to the Giants, that was a one-score game. It didn't come down to the last play, but the last meaningful play essentially was the Plaxico Burress touchdown with like less than a minute left. Patriots got the ball, had to go 80 yards for like 30 seconds. You're like, ain't enough Hail Marys in the world to do it. Um, Obviously, the second time they lost to him, it was a Hail Mary play at the end, trying to get it to a less than 100% growth. The Super Bowl against us, the Eagles, oh, they just came back from 20 to 3 down. They need another touchdown, a 2-point conversion. It's a Hail Mary at the end. It doesn't cut it. Even this year's Super Bowl, it didn't go down to the last play, but essentially that last play was the fourth down. Donald gets the burrow. He can't get it off. The game's over. So Marshawn Lynch at the 1 yard line, like, again, that was another Super Bowl where, let's be honest, Curse makes this circus catch. It gets tipped. Curse makes the catch. He gets it. He runs it for another 4 or 5 yards. Beast Mode gets the ball as first and goal. They're at like the 4.5, 5 yard line. He gets them to the 1 on his first carry. A timeout is called, and you're thinking the game's over. They got beast mode. Russ he's an athletic. He's a scrambler, and he's kind of shifty. He can make you miss. You can even hand it off to the fullback. But if they got 3 more cracks added from the half-yard line, they're about to win this game. Now they call a timeout, and the best you can come up with is a pass play, a slant to the middle of the field where the majority of defense is, and they lose the game. Even watching it back then and not having, I had some knowledge of the stuff I'm sharing with you guys, but I didn't have all the information. And even watching it then, just thinking with football logic, why the hell would you do that? Like, that was weird, and that was just like, nothing else can happen. There's no more time. And then, like, I'm not going to, I'm not attempting to play the race card or anything right here. I'm just being logical and saying, you know what? There was a lot of talk about Beast Mode. They want him to be the MVP of the game. He's got the long dreads. He's going against the system. He doesn't want to, not like in the same way Kaepernick, but the NFL system of being PC and agreeable. And I'm just here to do my job. He's not trying to speak to do media day. You know what I'm saying? And he had the big chain with Africa, and he already had 100 yards in the touchdown. He gets the second touchdown. He's clearly the MVP of the game. Is that the guy you want to be the story of the off season in between the Super Bowl and the beginning of the next season? Or do you want your quarterback, poster boy, all American, Boston? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not sitting here to say it all came down to that. But when you think about marketing, and like I said, seeing how certain other things later down the line affected their viewership, which affected their money, I think they kind of knew then that it could go either way, because these are 2 good teams, but we have a preferred marketing destination. like how we want to present ourselves, how we want to brand our league. And one thing I do remember about that Super Bowl, and I'm not even like the biggest guy with betting or spreads and all that stuff, but I remember the spread of that game changed 3 times. It started off with Patriots being underdogs, and they were like, I want to say a 2.5 or a 3 point underdog. That got switched to, because they knew, oh, raise the underdog in the Super Bowl against these guys. They're the defending champs. People are going to bet on that. So they did. So then they switched it, and then they went from them being the underdog to them being the favorite, and then they saw the line kind of, shifted drastically. So by the time kickoff actually happened, it started off with the Patriots being underdog to the Seahawks being the underdog to actually being one of the few pick 'em even games.
Yeah, I remember that.
So that was noteworthy to me, and seeing how things played out, and seeing that the people and the characters that were in it, I just paid attention to that. And then when you see like a all time terrible call happen, it's an eyebrow raiser, and a head scratcher.
Yeah, it's true. That was the second time it happened to Seattle too, because you brought it up earlier against the Steelers, one of the worst called Super Bowls ever.
Yeah.
Against
Terrible. Well, yeah, I didn't get his name and I didn't get the official statement, but a referee did eventually come out from that game and basically say that he didn't outright say it was rigged, but he basically said that there was a lot of phantom calls and things that were he basically said you never want to be the determining factor of a game, especially a game as big as the Super Bowl. So, long story short, he basically said he lost sleep over a lot of questionable calls that were made because he felt like the refs had a bigger part in determining the game as the players did. You never want that.
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing a lot of people don't know about the NFL is either that the referees are only part-time employees of the NFL,
Correct.
which
That's
is
true.
crazy. Like,
So think about that, and that's true. I was waiting for a good time to bring that up. But if you really think about that, right? So this is this multi-billion-dollar so-called competitive sport that coaches, players practice. They do all this stuff around the clock. Wouldn't you think the referees need to be full-time employees to know all the nuances of the game, what to look for, and do stuff? They think that this billion-dollar commodity is so well put together that they can have average guys off the street come in, and as long as you aren't willing to, I guess you could say, spill the beans, you can be a part of it. Because like I said, we all know it only takes one call, one missed call here or there that can determine the entire game. So as long as they know what to do, and if there is a script, think about it. Logically speaking, the script would make it easier for them to gauge stuff. I just got to make sure this happens, this doesn't happen, it stays on course. You can throw it, and then if you pay attention to, there's a lot of time these referees get together, right, and they're having a discussion about the call. What's that about? Like if somebody is doing their job, they saw it, they have clear view, and they're an official. Why is there need to be a negotiation? Like in the NBA, if somebody travels, they're not all coming together. So did he really travel? I think he took 1.5 steps from my angle. He didn't move his pivot foot. It's just a straight call. So that to me is always like kind of weird too. Like why does there always have to be a meeting to get the call? And then sometimes they botch it and get it wrong. It's just weird. The fail Mary, obviously, stuff like that.
I remember I think it was the NFC divisional game. I think it was the Bengals game, right? Bengals Raiders when they had that blatant like whistle was blown. Like I don't know, I don't know if he was supposed to step out of bounds and he didn't, or what happened there. But like somebody fucked up there because like he literally like
I didn't know if I was going to bring this up or not, but since you brought, I have to bring it up now. So, do you guys remember it was the 2010 season, Buccaneers versus Washington, the notorious fifth down? Remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
McNabb was the quarterback, right? And they got a fifth down to score. Now, like I said again, I'm not the biggest gambler, so I can't speak to everything involved in spreads and all this stuff. But the weird thing about that is, right? So, I just did some background on that game. So the over under on that game was 41 points, which clearly wasn't scored. Even with that fifth down play, the combined point total was only 33. So without that, it would have been significantly less. But the interesting thing was they basically by allowing the Redskins to have the fifth down, it allowed them to cover the spread. So without it, it would have been a lot of money that would not have been exchanged the same way. So I don't know to what extent, that played a big picture of the NFL's budget that week, how much money they brought in. They're just like, come on, it's a regular season game in the beginning of December against two teams that weren't that good. Why in the hell would you need a fifth down for somebody to score? It was weird. I remember seeing that at the time in ESPN and different places were making a joke. How did they get this wrong? What's going on here? But McNabb finds Santana Moss, and then on top of that, the kicker misses the extra point. So you're like, what's that about? That's weird. Like you did all of this, and we give you these extra downs for the game. They're not even going to overtime, and the only thing essentially did was help cover the spread on the game. That's like kind of stupid.
There's your answer.
Yeah. Like you bring that up with the referees a lot of times, like you see it a lot more now with the legalized sports betting where they meet up and like they'll throw a blatant the guy will just be doing his job, just seeing it, blatant holding or pass interference, throws the flag, they huddle up. Why didn't they huddle up for the previous 6? Because the motherfucker wasn't supposed to throw the flag and then they pick it up. And everyone was like, yo,
well, I'm gonna tell you something. I know some people out there are going to see this and think I'm just the biggest Patriots hater, and I'm not. I'm just they've been a beneficiary of a lot of things, and like I said, the fact that I've watched it in my lifetime, especially being an adult for most of it, I see things in real time. I catch things differently. There's two things that stood out to me, and these are like maybe people think meaningless plays. They're too good. They would have overcome anyway. I don't know if you guys remember this, but in the AFC Conference Championship that they played 2017. There was a play where they were playing. The Jaguars had the ball. I don't remember what quarter this particular play was. They had the ball. They're obviously already winning the game at this point. It's like a third and long, and we know how hot and cold, but mostly cold Blake Bortles was. Somehow he was just on that game, right? And he throws a dart. It's like third and say 11 or 12. They get a first down. It was the first time in my entire life watching football. A flag was thrown after the play was over and the pass was completed, and then they say it was something weird. They said it was either offsides or delay a game, and you guys know with those kind of penalties, it's an immediate stoppage. You don't get the playoff. How does that happen? Other than the fact of you wasn't supposed to get this first down, so you're supposed to be punting the ball now because at that point I want to say they might have been in field goal range already. And then, obviously the Patriots still had to make a comeback, and maybe they would have won anyway. But that was weird. And then there was a play that was later in the fourth quarter. Leonard Fournette, Blake Bortles throws him another dart. He has a pass and he just drops it. It would have been a clear first down and a walk-in touchdown, but he drops it. And do drops happen? Of course. But it's like I said, just seeing the way everything plays out. It was just weird because I told people and they thought I was crazy. I wish betting in PA was legal back then. I would have made a lot of money because what I told people was teams that host the Super Bowl never make it, and it didn't happen up until that point. So I told everybody the Vikings are going to lose to us, and they're going to lose by double digits. So it's not close, and there's not a chance that they can go to the Super Bowl. Now, if you guys remember that game, first possession, they get a touchdown, it's 7-0. People texting me, talking shit. Oh, so much for your prediction. They didn't score any more points after the game, guys. They lost. They got smoked. And I didn't hear anything by halftime. Once we got that pick six and we were up like what? I think it was like 24-7 or something. Everybody knew it was over. I didn't hear shit. My phone was pretty dry after that. And it's like I wasn't guessing and I wasn't just saying stuff being a fan. I'm just like I looked at it from a business standpoint, right? And I said, okay, if I'm an NFL and I get to host the Super Bowl, do I want the Vikings versus the Patriots? No. You know why you don't want Vikings versus Patriots? Tom Brady has never lost to the Vikings. There's another fun fact for you. So if he plays them in a Super Bowl against a team that historically is 0-4, known to be the choke artist, a team PJ can't stand, we know for a fact that they are not about to beat the Patriots on neutral turf with Case Keenum. Come on. So think about it. What did that do? It costs you money and it costs you ratings, right? Right. And they had the miracle play too, and they beat the Saints or whatever. And even that, like how it happened, was kind of weird. Honestly, I think that might have won us the Super Bowl as much as the Philly special, anything else, because I ain't gonna lie to you, I didn't want to see Drew Brees with Nick Foles. No, I didn't. Especially after his performance in the Falcons game, he barely got by that game. But anyway, Vikings versus Patriots, not a good Super Bowl matchups, right? Eagles versus Patriots was ended up with what ended up happening, that would be best case scenario. You damn sure don't want Vikings versus the Jaguars in the Vikings home stadium. And
That'd
then
be a
the
dirt
last
there.
the last scenario would have been the Eagles versus the
Horrible.
Jaguars in the Super Bowl. None of those scenarios would be good or profitable for the NFL. So you have to take that into consideration and look at, just logically speaking, hey, even if I don't necessarily rig all my games or something, if I can throw a flag and prevent this team from scoring, or swallow my whistle and let this team go up big, and this is my preferred money making matchup, I would rather that than let the Jaguars play the Vikings in the Super Bowl in the Vikings home stadium. How are you going to market that?
That is true. That's true.
Horrible.
Big time.
I want to go back to your statement about Leonard Fournette dropping that ball. And I want you guys to go back and look at the history of Leonard Fournette when he actually does catch the ball, when he gets thrown to. And then look at that play. Because I actually watched this play. Watch it. The way he drops the ball compared to how he drops the ball on a regular play, significantly different. Leonard Fournette's not one of them guys that's like, yo, I'm scared to get hit. On that, he was looking for the hit. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. If you ever see his drops in Tampa this year, just alone, he dropped it looking at the ball. He wasn't looking at the ball when he dropped that pass.
Yeah, you're right about that, because he's one of those guys. I call it looking to throw in or looking to catch in. So when he's doing it, he's like one of those guys. Is like he's looking the whole time. He's making sure he possesses it.
And then on top of that, your other one in the miracle catch, that guy hasn't made it. Like the tackle that guy tried to make, you don't make that, and you don't even accidentally hit a button in Madden to do that. Like it doesn't happen, dude. Like it doesn't happen.
But since we're talking about things that don't happen, you know what does happen? Every decade, a team is a dynasty, and not just called one, literally a dynasty. So this is something I've known for a while, and this is just going back in part to the entertainment aspect, but also history of the game. So here's a fun fact. Every single decade, a team wins at least 3 Super Bowls within that decade span and is deemed a dynasty. Now, this actually predates the Super Bowl, so I'm going to go all the way back and just outline all the teams that were dynasties. So starting in the 20s, the first ones were the Bulldogs, which are now known as the Cleveland Browns. In the 20s, they won 3 championships. In the 30s, the Packers won 4. In the 40s, the Bears won 4. The 50s were the only time that I saw that you kind of had 2 dynasties. So the Browns and the Lions both won 3 championships in the 50s. And I think there was another team, might have been the Bears or somebody, that actually won 2. So you really had, going into that last year of the decade, 3 teams that could have potentially been dynasties. And, it's kind of hard to get a current state of mind from the 50s, and even with the betting and all of that other aspect. But I just thought that was interesting. So now that created some more homework for me, because now I'm really intrigued about, hey, what was going on in the 50s. But anyway, after that, the 60s, the Packers won 4. And the reason I bring that up is because this is pre-Super Bowl. Because if you remember, the Packers won, the first 2 Super Bowls? So not even including that stuff, just from the decade of the 60s alone, they had won 4 championships. And again, going back to what Bobby brought up with the laws changing, all these different things that the NFL was a participant in, this is really where you saw the turn and that change happen. And who's the Super Bowl trophy named after? This is the Vince Lombardi trophy. So we know that there's all different kind of connections and narratives and storylines and stuff that get played out. Now, in the AFL, because that was in existence, they didn't have a team win 3 championships, just because before the end of the decade, that league kind of like got merged with the NFL. But the Oilers did win 2 championships in the 60s, and I believe they actually won back-to-back. So had they continued to be a full decade of a league, they potentially could have gone on to win one. So now we're in Super Bowl era, right? So 70s, we know about the Steel Curtain. They got their 4. We know about the 80s and the 49ers. They had their 4. 90s was the Cowboys. They got 3. Patriots in the 2000s, they got their 3. In the 2010s, the Patriots also got another 3. So what I'm here to tell you is my prediction is that this is going to continue. And in the 2020s, we are going to see another team win at least 3 championships inside of the decade. Now, the thing that makes it a little bit tricky is that what I've noticed is that even though they went inside of the decade, it might not necessarily be like, so for instance, when somebody won in the 2019 season, but the the actual Super Bowl game is played in the year 2020, right? So that's what happened with the Chiefs. They played, it was the 2019 season when they won, but the game itself was played in February 2020. So I'm just paying attention to who's winning Super Bowls now. I don't, especially with Brady retiring, maybe they get, a blockbuster trade and get, a Russell Wilson, a Deshaun Watson, or somebody else. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. Obviously, the Chiefs and Mahomes isn't going anywhere. As long as Andy Reid decides to continue to coach, it would make sense that he has a dynasty. Maybe that's how he goes into retirement and they win maybe, two more or even three more. And then now it's like, hey, the beginning of my career, I was getting to these big games and blowing them. Now everything's coming together and I can retire. Then you got the Rams. Obviously they're in LA. It's a big market. You still got enough key players that can carry. And it could be somebody else. The decade is just starting. So I'm bringing it up to this is if you don't believe the NFL is rigged, at least pay attention to stuff like that. And hey, now that you can go on FanDuel, DraftKings and all this stuff. If somebody makes it to a Super Bowl and they already got two championships and the decade's not over, I'm going all in on that team because there's a high probability that they're actually going to win it. And I am a little bit of a part-time Chiefs fan. I suspect that they might be the team of the decade. So that's just something to keep an eye on and something to keep in mind looking forward because when it happens, you'll know it's not a coincidence, regardless of what team it is.
That's true. I looked at that a little bit in baseball too. It was always the Yankees. The Yankees won a World Series in every decade except the last one. And I always told people, I said, yo, bet on the Yankees. And they didn't win. And I was like, sorry, it's not rigged. Because I was like, they got to win, right? They didn't win. And I was like, oh, maybe not. But like the NFL, it's crazy how that happens like that. Which, keep an eye on it because not only are you looking at the teams, you're looking at the player who won MVP as well because it correlates. Right. So if you got a team that won Super Bowls and the MVP was on the other team, put your life savings on the opposite team because it's like, and it's crazy because like you can't refute it. You can't. It's crazy.
Since 2001, that's crazy.
I wanted to bring another thing up about Super Bowls too because a lot of people don't even know they had this. When you talked about earlier that they already like predetermined who's going to be there, Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, he said before that the two teams that are here are predetermined to be here. I wish it was us, but these were the ones that were chosen. He refuted his statement when he said that. And that right there goes to – I wanted to bring that up when you're talking about the Jets case because it was like – I was like, did he really say that? Was he drunk? And then when you see the court case happen, it's like, wow. Like, hey. And then you see these stats where three because you think about it, like 3 in 10 years doesn't seem like a lot.
It's a lot, especially in football. Yeah. Because this is the thing, and I'm gonna bring this up because I don't know if a lot of people know this, and we talked about this before we went live. So the injury report was.
It's the Illuminati. It's the Illuminati.
They're kicking him out. He's about to come back on. He'll be right back on. Give him a second.
It's the Illuminati. See, yo, we gotta watch ourselves when we leave. We gotta watch ourselves when we get out of here.
Where's Larry Johnson?
Oh shit!
Did Larry Johnson?
It's the Illuminati. Illuminati was coming for you, bro. Oh shit! They got hitmen on you right now. You better lock the shop.
What did I say? But
you said
no. Yeah, and they tried to injure my device. So what happened? So no, the thing is the reason injury reports come out and was ever a thing to be reported had nothing to do with fair competitive contests or just reporting in general. It actually was done in connection to gambling so that they know what players were playing or not and how that would affect the spread. Because we obviously know, like for instance, if say Chiefs are playing the Bills in the Sunday Night Football and say, Mahomes catches COVID or something like that. Well, the Chiefs, if they're say playing at home, typically when two good teams play each other, the home team's the favorite 2.5, 3 points. So if now the star quarterback's not playing and he's a big aspect to scoring and all that different stuff, you could see an entire swing in a game where they might be a 3-point favorite and go to a 6-point underdog. So the whole point is the reason for injury reports being installed and being a thing was about betting, because back in those times before computers and all this stuff, you had to check the newspaper. So that's the original reason why it was reported like you would any other news, and basically know where to put your money or where not to.
It's crazy though. It's true. You don't really see that in any other sport either. I wonder why.
Because they're a sport. Think about it like this too. So if you're being competitive and you don't want to reveal your hand, why would you name, or why would you list a star player being out? Wouldn't you want the other team to kind of like game plan for that star, or think that they're going to be there, and then boom,
Exactly.
right before the game, up, surprise, he's not playing, and we got a game plan for you that you didn't have because you didn't know he was going to be there.
Yeah, I agree, because it reminds me specifically of baseball pitchers. Like, how come you have to report your quarterback being out 5 days ahead of the game, but your pitcher is the starter until game time, and then you pull him all of a sudden? Like, you knew he wasn't.
And let's connect the dots. Let's connect the dots. Remember what we brought up earlier? You had to sell out your arena 3 days prior to make sure you weren't blacked out, so that you can have the local rights to your TV game. So obviously, if a star player isn't playing, yeah, you're going to get some loyal fans that want to still go to the game or whatever. But that's a great opportunity to not go, because you're like, hey, if this person's not playing, well, we know what's going to happen, or at least we think we know what's going to happen, right? So it's going to affect a lot of different things. And you got to remember something. Just because the NFL has these deals in place and partnerships, nothing is guaranteed per se. So they still have to follow through with their end of the bargain. And part of the reason why it would be rigged is to kind of like have an insurance policy. Like, hey, I'm not going to leave certain things up to chance, and this messes up the money. And I got $13 billion deal on the table, and that's supposed to be spread out over these years. And because you got to remember, they have their analytics and stuff too. These are the prime time games. These are the prime times as far as matchups and different times of the year and stuff like that. So even if you think about it, when has there not been a big marquee matchup on a holiday, or on, like you said, oh, this person's about to break a record. Oh, they just so happen to be playing this team on Monday Night Football. And then, of course, they do it. They have the ceremony. Then they go back to the game. And it's like, you kind of knew this stuff was coming.
Yeah. Like, what were the odds that Brady was going to have this good of a year, that he was going to break the record in New England? You know, like, I mean,
you know what's so funny that you say that? I hear this so often, and it's kind of like they're almost being arrogant and throwing it in your face. They say so many times, you can't script it any better, or this is like the perfect storybook ending, or whatever. They say it all the time.
Yeah, but it's not rigged though. But they can't plan it any better because they did plan it. Yeah, one thing I want to talk about. We're talking a lot about Brady and the Patriots, and I can bring up multiple cases that I even hear the announcers say, "Wow, like you never know." Like, I love Tom Brady. We all know that, but like, why is the game specifically rigged for him? And I want to talk about that a little bit and bring some light to that. Why people don't even know.
That's interesting.
Know that.
I'm gonna let you lead the charge on this, because I wasn't prepared for that, so I'm intrigued.
So I had to bring it up. I had to look into it because, you know, just because I like Guy doesn't mean I don't think it's rigged for him. Because we know a point. The Super Bowl against Kansas City, all of a sudden Kansas City can't score a fucking touchdown. Come on. Patrick Mahomes can't find the ball. Doesn't make sense at all. Doesn't make sense. It's rigged, right? Yeah. So we talked a lot about TV deals. Now, I'm going to let you lead it because I know you got information on this as well. A lot of you guys don't know, because I didn't know this, but the TV deal in the NFL is obviously a big deal. We talked about it. Has to do with scheduling, all the networks. Well, the person that runs the TV broadcasting committee for the NFL is none other than Patriots owner Robert Kraft. So if you guys don't understand why games are rigged for Tom Brady, well, that might be a little bit why. Which is huge, bro. Not only does he rig, is he the lead guy, he leads the negotiations for it. So he's the president of the NFL TV broadcasting crew. He runs the negotiations with the TV deals, and he also is on the board for Viacom, which is CBS. And in 2000, I think it was 2009, he brought in a deal worth $24 billion, which was the biggest deal, which led to what they're doing now for the NFL TV deals. So every time you guys look and say, oh, wow, why was it rigged for Tom Brady? Well, I'm not saying Tom Brady's not a great player, because he is a great player. He does great things. But my man Louie, you always ask me, why has it got to be rigged for Tom Brady? That's why right there. The biggest money's coming in on the TV deals, and who runs it? It's crazy.
Well, here's some numbers. So I did look at specific times and stuff. So here's some numbers that I was able to pull from the 2017 season. So in the 2017 season, the NFL games that three NFL games attracted the highest TV ratings for 30-second ads. One was $699,602. That was on NBC's Sunday Night Football. Another one was for $550,000, 709. This was also NBC. This was a Thursday night game, and if you recall, that year they were split Thursday night games between NBC and CBS. So the last one, which generated again the highest 30-second ad revenue, was for $549,791, which was on CBS. So these are all you keep in mind, like the NFL throughout the course of its history has switched which program is on which network. Because I remember, and you guys probably remember this, way back in the day, Monday Night Football was actually on ABC before it was on ESPN, and ESPN used to actually host the Sunday Night Football games. So things have changed throughout the years. So what they do is they negotiate TV deals and they rearrange things for what they project to be the highest revenue. And then what they end up doing is do their research, and then they reshuffle things depending on what times on what stations have different ads, and just different ways to get the most bang for your buck for that time slot. So I think what they figured out is that when you have games on nationally televised networks where you don't have to have cable, so everybody has it and can see it, you're going to get some of the most viewership, or just the most bang for buck. You're going to get, like, they look at it like, for every dollar per second, this time slot has X amount more value than something else, another time slot. So I think they kind of figured that out, and then, like you said, they cater certain things like, hey, this is when Brady's going to play the Patriots for the first and only time, because now he's retiring. That was a one-shot deal. Maybe they knew about his pending retirement. Maybe they said, you know what, he's getting up there in age anyway, and because I wouldn't even call it a freak injury for somebody in their 40s. Injuries could happen. Let's secure this spot and make sure we do it, especially when now we have a true changing of the guard when the Patriots just went and drafted a quarterback. You know what I mean? So it all makes sense when you start. I always tell people this: regardless of what is said or not being said, if you follow the money, the truth will reveal itself over time. So just follow the money.
I never knew that about Robert Kraft, and I was like, wow, makes sense, because right after he became the president, that's when the 2000 Patriots started. Coincidence, right?
Well, think about and look at all of the legal trouble he got out of, and think about how bad of a PR nightmare that would have been if he, one, went to jail, and two, went to jail for the stuff he was accused of.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, dude, it's crazy. I mean, like you said, you follow the money, you see what happens, and then you break it down individually. Like, people ever wonder why Tom Brady always plays on like CBS? Well, that's a big reason, because Robert Kraft is part on the board of them. So he's like, yo, my boy's on air.
Well, here's the thing too, bringing that up. So CBS has a like I brought up earlier, it has a 78-year consecutive partnership with the NFL. But I don't know who did it and when, but for at least the past 20 years, they've had pretty much exclusive rights. Not exclusive, but they have majority rights to AFC conference games, and the majority of the NFC conference games have been going to Fox since '94. So there's definitely something to that, in which you brought up, and I don't know that is ever going to change, because now that it has been such a revenue driver, and it's just like second nature. You just expect it to be on those networks. I think it's going to continue to stay that way, and then all the thing they do now is just rotate Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's just crazy how, like, growing up, Super Bowl was always on the same network. Now it's each one of the four major ones gets one every other. It's like every other, boom. It's nuts, dude. Like, it's crazy. And if that doesn't tell you it's all about money, Because we know damn well, like if you're Fox, right? You're Fox Sports or CBS or whatever, and you have the Super Bowl for 15 straight years, why the hell would you give up the rights to it? Like, why would you be like, all right, yeah, sure, we'll get it every fourth year? Like, it's just dumb. Unless you're getting the same amount of money to just say whatever. And that's exactly what happened, which is crazy. And it also brings
like I said, yeah.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it brings up another thing. You guys ever wonder why they can flex the schedule at a certain date in the season and not the whole season? Like it's crucial because they already put this they put the schedule out at the beginning of the year, so they already know like what games mean something, and then they make it flexed because, like you said earlier, it's a football, it's a sport. Somebody might get hurt that's not supposed to, and they're gonna be like, "Yo, they got to lose this game now. We got to switch it," and that's really what happened. Plenty of times.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point that you brought up. And one thing I've noticed over I would say at least the past maybe 10 years, I feel like there's been a lot more division games at the end of the year because, like, think about just our division this year, right? The past couple. So you add another game to the schedule. There was like for the entire division, like I want to say, depending on which team it was, between consecutive division games in a row. We know the division winners who host at least guaranteed to host the playoff game, and this is what determines the whole seeding. So saving it for the end of the year and having the drama and build up to it is another way to tune them in and make everything must-see TV every single week. Because if multiple divisions are at stake and then just conference seeding, it keeps flipping every single week.
It's true, absolutely. And like one thing also, because like you said, it's the end of the year. What do people want to see? They're going to get better viewership from that city when it's a rivalry game, a division game at the end of the year. And when they get the ads for that city and it's a rivalry, they're more likely to get more when the game's at the end of the year rather than putting it week 7. That's why you see it like that. It's right. And you can definitely tell what markets they're trying to get to based on what teams play each other at the end of the year too. There was a game too. I remember it wasn't even the beginning of the year, and I said this all along. It was the AFC North or not North South, and it was the Titans Colts. Now the game was. Let me bring it up here. We got the Colts are horrible, right? Remember the game they lost to the Ravens in overtime? And I was like, yo, 100%, they're going to lose this game in overtime, but they're going to win the next 2 games. Like, why would they do that? So my viewpoint was like, and it proved right. They lost in overtime because it was a great game. And then if you look at the Ravens schedule and you look at the Colts schedule, the Ravens needed to win that game more than the Colts because of the division, the schedule. But the Colts, they were able to lose that game and they had to win the next 2 to make anybody watch the Titans game. Because remember, the Titans lost, and you're like, how the hell? They lost to the Jaguars. They lost to Titans lost to the Jaguars that week, so the Colts didn't have to win. But Baltimore had to win because they were playing Kansas City the following week. So it was like, dude, you could have bet that game logically and seen it, and it absolutely happened. And you're like, look at the follow 2 weeks ahead on the matchups that were on Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football. And it was like, yeah, it was so obvious. Like, I said it in the podcast a couple times when I was talking about the sports bets, and I'm like, I'm looking at the schedule, like, these teams are going to win. And they did. Like, you can't pick it out with every team, but the good teams that get markets that people watch and they have a good schedule coming up, you could pick it out pretty easily.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And the thing about it is people have to realize, and like I said, I'm not the hugest sports gambler, but I got into it. And the reason why is because I'm a sports guy and I like numbers, so I like to pay attention to stuff. And one of the biggest aspects of what you're talking about that you're right about is the schedule. You have to look at the weeks before and after what your records are. And, some of it is taking a shot in the dark, but I think you can accurately predict upsets and stuff too, because you see, like you said, who has a game to spare, who can do what, this, that, and the third. And then on top of that too, it allows you to develop, I call it a betting IQ, right? Because a lot of times when people first get started, and I made the same mistake because I haven't been doing this long, but the mistake I made when I initially started off, and even suspecting and knowing certain things about the NFL's manipulation, is you still want to refer to just purely football logic, and you can't do that. You have to have
Yeah,
some kind of betting logic to know what makes sense, what's a trap bet versus what's not. And then as you start to see that and pay attention, and then you watch how the games play out, I can always tell you every single time. I can call when a game is being rigged. There is some manipulation going on because what you start to notice is that on pivotal moments, third downs, red zone situations, that's where you get penalties and that's where you get just random weird plays that like think about it like so this was entertaining. I've never seen anything like this in my life. So that Chiefs Bills playoff game between the last 2 minutes to the game and overtime, 25 points were scored. How many penalties though?
0.
None. There's no
yeah,
penalty, right? So guys can go up and down the field. There's nobody holding on the offensive line. There's no PIs on offense or defense. There's no anything. It's just nonstop scoring back and back. It was like you were watching a Madden simulation. And then it's just so
Yeah.
funny that the Cowboys can't get off a couple plays in 14 seconds and they lose a game and they were already on their side of the 50. Kansas City can get a kickoff, 3 plays, and kick a field goal in 13 seconds. It's
the
unbelievable.
following week, 1 week later,
Yeah.
like, not a year, 1 week later. Yeah, dude.
So and it's entertaining for sure. That's why the thing about it is because people might sit up there. And, I think what it is that people, when you hear information like this, and we're pulling a lot of receipts, it seems so shocking. It seems too good to be true. It seems too big. Like it has to be so many moving parts. But the thing about it is, I think people that legitimately love the sport and root for teams have this fear that if I see that there's manipulation and I can prove it, I'm not going to want to watch the sport anymore. And for me, I still have love for the sport and I want to watch it because it's the same reason you watch, a Netflix series or any TV drama or movie. I'm not just watching it rooting for a team and stuff. I'm watching it for the entertainment aspect to say, like, can I guess who's going to be the leading actor this year, which is essentially your MVP or some of these guys that emerge out of nowhere. What are all of these players and teams? What's their roles? How's it going to play out? It's very intriguing and interesting. So to me, it never ruined anything because one, I never made any assumptions about what kind of league and business it is, and two, it's still entertaining. Bottom line, everybody's
Yeah.
going to keep watching it, and they know that.
Look at the Super Bowl. Final 2 plays of the game. You got Aaron Donald, one man on him. Like, theoretically, like every single person in the world knows you double team Aaron Donald the whole game, which they did most of it, and then all of a sudden at the end of the game, the final 2 plays, he's single covered. Why? Like
but hey, did you see this though? They did a camera angle from the other side. And I don't know if there was any like physical contact, but basically Jalen Ramsey slipped or fell down or something, and basically Chase was running down the sideline wide open.
Yeah.
And they're like,
I just saw that
only
today.
they had more time. If they had more time, they would have got. And to me, that's part of selling the story, right? You have to sell the story. Hey, these guys are young. They'll be back. They played together in college. They took the league by storm in their first and second year. And it's like they might not never get back to a Super Bowl, to be honest with you. But they because they did it so early, you can always sell that story.
Yeah. If so, somebody sent it to me earlier. It was the last 16 quarterbacks that got to their first Super Bowl.
None of them went back. I think I sent that to you.
None of them went back. But dig into that more. Dig into that more and look at the seasons that they made it and what they had after it. It's very similar to Cincinnati, all of them. Which you brought up before, like NFL always has a Cinderella team.
Yep.
And then they never come back.
That was the Bengals.
I mean, I can think of a few, like, and sometimes these Cinderella teams make it to the Super Bowl, sometimes they don't. Like a couple years ago, the Titans were the Cinderella team, right? Traded for Tannehill, Derrick Henry's on like a monster. You're going into going into tough places, going into Baltimore, then you're going into New England. It's like, oh crap, these guys are legit. If they can beat these other teams, maybe they'll beat Kansas City too, and then they fall short. But then now, since they're not the Cinderella story, they're a little bit more respected. You take them serious. And now they play another team who ends up being a Cinderella. And like I said, it changes over time. And I remember even still the Vikings. How the hell did they lose to the Falcons that year, right? The kicker didn't miss a field goal in 2 years. You're playing in a dome. At the time, it was the highest scoring offense in the history of the league. You got Moss on one side, Carter on the other. Randall was up there in age, but he could still move and make plays with his legs. And it's like kickers just missing field goals all of a sudden. Plays that just should be happening aren't happening. And you just like, how does this even happen? But then you look at the Cinderella story, and that's a part of, to me, the storyline.
Absolutely, it is.
I
It's big,
mean,
like it happens all the time, every year.
I mean, if there's a Cinderella story, I mean, New York Giants beat the undefeated Patriots. They just mind you, if you remember that season, they just snuck into the playoffs.
Right, they were 16.
They just
They were
got
low.
in by the yep. Then they ran into they ran into us and took us out the playoffs. They ran into I forgot who they played in the NFC Championship. No, they played us in the NFC Championship. Like who would have thought
In
that was
Green
Brett
Bay,
Favre?
like a place you don't. Right.
That was Brett Favre's last hoorah, right? With Green Bay, you would have thought the stage was set for him, but because this small 6 seed came in, it's New York. It's a big market. We're gonna throw him in there against the giant killer Brady, right? And look what happened.
Yeah, brings me up another thing about how like a lot of teams they predetermined to make it to the Super Bowl. How about the 2000 Baltimore Ravens? A lot of people don't know that about them. That they had one of the worst offenses ever.
Oh, terrible! Terrible. Trent Dilfer, real simple. We score first, we'll win the game.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't know why they actually won. That's my point about it. Earlier in the season, Art Modell said he was selling the team. Team was selling for ass. They weren't nothing like it. I don't even know what the number it would sell for. It wasn't even $1 billion. Put it that way, which is crazy if you look at teams now. He ends up saying, "I'm the team." League ends up allowing Baltimore Ravens to win the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, their defense was good, but their offense was absolutely horrendous. Couldn't even move the ball, but they won. And then they sold for a record price, which transitioned into how much the franchises are now. It's insane. So it's like
follow the money. What do I keep saying? Follow the money.
Big business, like you said in the beginning of this podcast. Big business.
Yeah,
simple.
I want to bring up one more point.
Entertainment.
It's entertainment. I want to bring up one more point, and then I want to let you end it off, Steve. But in 2004, the NFL was in a lawsuit, and the NFL won the lawsuit by stating, you can't sue one team because we are not 32, we are one. They stated that they were not. Yeah, like you said, it was in a lawsuit in 2004. That's what they stated, and that's what they won by. So if you look at any other leagues, basketball, baseball, hockey, even soccer in America, they're all individual owned. They're all individual teams. This is one team. It's like a McDonald's. You got the McDonald's, you got the guy who actually owns it all, and then you got your little franchise owners. That's pretty much what the fucking NFL is. Yeah. But Steve, it's all on you now. Finish it off.
Oh, I left this out. I think we talked about. I forgot to mention this. The NFL, another thing that they do that's just interesting. It maybe doesn't have any foreign on the game or anything like that, but it's always interesting that they always put out these subliminal messages and say things that have nothing to do with the game that correlate. And one of those things that I caught this year, and I screenshot it, so I'm gonna put it, post it online. But they always like to bring up numbers and accomplishments and different things. But this was a strange one that they brought up to me, which was the weather. They always like to talk about the weather of these other like the home teams, what the temperature is in their city. I'm like, what does that have to do with the game? But the reason it's interesting is because one, this year for the second year in a row, the home team that hosts the Super Bowl was playing in the Super Bowl, and then so you have that, and then you have the other team. So it was weird. The high temperature for Sunday was 30 degrees in Cincinnati. The high temperature in Inglewood, which is where the LA Rams play in the Inglewood Stadium, was 86 degrees. And I remember an announcer talking about, oh, look at that. The difference in the temperature of the games is 56 degrees in Super Bowl 56. So it's like even just little stupid things you think have nothing to do with the game and like what are they even bringing this up for? It's just always those little subliminal things to point out storylines and narratives to get you kind of sucked in and to show that there is some kind of connection. But I just thought that was interesting. So we talked about a lot of the TV deals and stuff. I brought a little bit of the history up of the ties to the mob and Al Capone and stuff. But here's some modern stuff to keep in mind with the NFL. So NFL has reached agreements with Fox Bet, BetMGM, PointsBet, WinBet, and then there's a couple more: DraftKings, FanDuel, and Caesars Entertainment. So those are the only seven that have any connections to the NFL, and the only ones that are permitted to purchase NFL advertisement and media in the betting space. So again, not only did they start with those gambling ties, now they're partnering up with a lot of places since sports betting is legal in a lot of places. And what do? You run those advertisements on the NFL, and then in connection with that, you have all of these analysts and stuff that make predictions on the games. So whether it's a subconscious thing or a conscious thing, a lot of the viewership and loyalty for like the pregame programs and stuff is going to be predicated on, hey, if I'm a sports bettor and I say watch Fox and there's a Fox bet and it gives me some kind of coupon code and these guys are getting predictions right, I'm going to stick with that. So there's like I said again, you always got to follow the money and look at the connection between the teams, the fans, and other people that make money with them. So, bottom line, like I said, like how I started it off, don't trust anybody's research but your own. Fact check everything. Be suspicious, but also, don't be, too suspicious that, you question everything. Don't be too gullible that you believe everything. We're not here to lie to you. We don't have any connections to the league or anything. We're just here to tell you that the world is a stage, and this is why they come up with the saying: believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Why? Because even the things right in front of you can be manipulated, and since we're not physically puppets, you never know who's pulling the strings.
That's true, man. And I agree with you about the sports betting stuff, man. I don't even want to get started in that because we could go a whole nother hour. But I will say, like, if you look at the sports betting apps and you look at the player parlays, all that type of shit, and even more specifically with the NFL, if you look at the halftime bets that are available for NFL bets in apps, and then look at how the game ended, every single one of them, I was like, they even rigged the halftime bets, bro. Horrible. I mean, I know multiple
I'm gonna say one thing. So I didn't do nothing crazy, but I probably had maybe 6 bets on the Super Bowl, and one of them was like the little risky bet thing that they had, which is a special. So besides, like put it to you like this: out of the 6 bets I did say on the Super Bowl, I won 4 of them. And the thing is, the one I was kind of taking a little bit of a shot at dog. I'm like, all right, it's a risky bet. I'm gonna just throw some things here to see what happens. But what I did was I waited until halftime. I was very confident the Rams were going to win, no question about it. But they were the favorites. So I want to say before the game started, they were at like minus 260. So basically, you didn't even get back what you were putting down to win the bet. As soon as that T. Higgins touchdown happened, because I suspected it would be a good game and they would be losing at some point, those odds went to like plus like 105 or 110 or something. And that's when I put my bet in. So I actually made more money just by waiting and, like I said, paying attention to that stuff. So again,
we did.
If you know what to anticipate and you know how they do their business, why not make some money off of it for yourself? Because at the end of the day, you can believe what you want to, or you can, observe the facts that are in front of you and, start to develop and do your own research. Because I cashed out on that. And some people maybe still cashed out too, but why not cash out with better odds, make more money for the same amount you're putting down?
Yeah, dude. It was crazy because it was -3 Cincinnati, and then maybe like 2 gameplay minutes later, it was -1 LA. And we're like, yo, we got it in. And it was crazy because it was like nothing it was funny because like nothing happened for them to switch the line back to LA. But they just got all them people taking that Cincinnati line. It was like, shit. They had all the people that because what happens in the NFL, I know is from a lot of people that gamble out there that aren't very great at it. But what a lot of people do, they'll take the Rams in the beginning, and then they'll watch the game, and then they see, oh, Cincinnati's -3 now. I better switch the other bet to cover my ass. And a lot of people do that shit, and then they get double their money.
I would say who wins? The NFL and
everybody.
Vegas.
Everybody wins except the person that bet it. So it's like if you actually look at it like you're looking at it, you're like it's hard to lose. But yo, I just want to say personally, yo, thanks for coming on here. I know it was a lot of information, and guys, trust me, he has a lot more stuff he could talk about. But this is just mind blowing some of the information you brought up here. I love it. It's probably some of the best things I talk about because I like proving conspiracy theory is wrong. And like you said, I want you guys not to just believe what we said here and what Steve was bringing up, but go check it out because everything he said, I know it's true, it's real, and it's going to get you second guessing. But it's still going to be entertainment, and that's why we like football. But other than that, Ollie, I'll let you say something, and then Steve finish it, and we'll get out of here.
The greatest quote from this podcast was, "Rig doesn't mean the whole game." And I need people to think about that. I need people to understand that it's not the whole game. There's bits and pieces, little details like that. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
That's all. Oh, and the fact that Al Capone got his fingerprints on this is blowing. It's still blowing my mind. So I'm just like, yo, how the fuck did he like? He was rigging Leatherhead games. Like he was rigging the games where they were wearing Leatherheads. Like this.
Yeah, I'm curious now. Like, is he the one that brought like alcohol into the stadiums and shit too?
That makes me think too. I thought about that.
I was thinking about it all the time. Like,
I mean, there was a prohibition stage too, and the NFL was a thing then already.
Yeah, it was.
Huh.
He was in Atlantic City for a long time. He was in. He sat post in Atlantic City for years, and it was around the same.
Al Capone in the NFL and see what else he did with it.
I'm gonna look it up.
There's more to it, which is crazy.
I'm gonna look it up. I want to do a lot of research on this.
That's fine. If Al Capone was part of making something, the creation of it, it's probably not legit. Like, I mean, he was about making money. He wasn't about being.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, Bobby. Everything that I've brought up and all of the stats, this is for legal gambling. We didn't even talk about what they deem to be illegal and how much stuff it seems on that front. So that's something else to think about.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's nuts, man. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for taking your time to talk about this. And I believe the NFL is rigged. And I believed it before I spoke to you. After I spoke to you, I was like, yo, not betting NFL, not touching it. And I hear a lot more of the information from you, which was 8 months ago. Man, good shit. That's all I gotta say. Good shit. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime y'all want me to come on, any subject matter, I'm gonna bring it and provide the best content I can. And this is why I didn't want to wait, because I know when we talked about it, we said, should we do it this week or next? I'm like, no, this is the week following the Super Bowl. Some of the stuff is fresh on people's minds. Let's just go for it. So, like I said, I was surprising myself with some of the things I was pulling up, but this rabbit hole goes deep. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it was, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I'm sure we're going to see you back on here very soon. We're still waiting for you to get another competitor in the debates, because me personally, I want to see you do Ali Tyson or Ali Floyd. We've been seeing that one on there.
I won't debate nobody against Ali, especially not Mike Tyson.
Well, not because I remember we posted it before, and it was Ali versus Floyd, and someone was coming at Steve. So I've been posting that. And nobody wants to take a bite. They're all scared.
Listen, this is what I will say in regard to that. I personally believe Ali's the GOAT. I think that's a lock. I don't think that's ever going to change. And if somebody feels differently, I'm willing to debate that. But I just want to let you know, I have, because my dad had a lot of this stuff. I have actual magazines from the 70s. I have pretty much all the Tyson fights on DVD. I mean, excuse me, Tyson too, but more so Muhammad Ali. So it's going to be a steep hill to climb, because I'm going to have a lot of material. And if I do it, I'll probably bring the magazines too, so you can see them. I just start reading out of it, and then it's like, okay, here you go.
I'm a boxing guy, so I mean, the Floyd one interests me, but definitely not Tyson and Ali.
Yeah. Someone brought up. I want to get your take on it. Tyson and Frazier. What do you think about that?
Your uncle brought that up. Hell of a fight. Let's just say that. Let's just say that. Do you want to break down to that right now, or you want to wait? Because
I will wait. I just want your opinion on who wins. That's all.
Right now, I'm gonna lean towards Frazier, but when I actually break it down, Frazier
might
ain't never
slip.
seen somebody like Ali. But Frazier isn't weak. Like he can take a punch. But I don't know. I mean, we've seen him in there with a guy like, down goes Frazier. We've seen him against a power puncher. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's hard because Mike does a lot of shit in the ring,
We're
man. He
talking
doesn't
about
just
Yeah, we're talking about Iron Mike Tyson, not like the crazy one at the end.
He
He played
Mike does a lot of
nobody.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Mike does a lot of bullshit in the ring. He does a lot of movement. Like does a lot of
Mm-hmm.
Frazier does that too, but you see Ali. I mean, sorry, you see Tyson going body head body and out. Like Frazier never seen somebody like that. That's why it's just hard because I can't count out Frazier because he can walk Tyson down. He has the strength and the ability. I'll get into it later.
Yeah.
I can't. I gotta actually.
That's tough,
Steve's
man.
over there.
Ooh.
That
If
is
you
very
want-
tough. And shout out
Only
to
thing I'll
Iago
say-
for this one.
Only thing I'll say about that is it would be hard for me to pick a winner in that fight. I think it might come down to something that Frazier is not in control of. I'm sure you know this, PJ, but he was blind out of one eye. So when you go
Yeah.
back and watch some of the tape, you can kind of see that. And I think the most dangerous thing about Tyson is just that one punch. It's like if he gets caught slipping and say too much sweat gets in that one eye or starts to swell a little bit, and he just because he's blind, the other one he could get caught slipping, and it only takes that one punch
That's
from
why
Tyson. So
if
that's tough.
if,
I
if
don't
you
know.
ever
That's
seen
tough.
Frazier's guard when he's blocking, that's why he dips his head down, and that's dangerous. That's why he
Mhm.
goes like this a lot when he
Right.
and
That's what I'm saying. You only get
move,
one
move.
time
So
to get hit with a Tyson punch, and then
it's that uppercut. It's that Tyson does a body head body that's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's bang and comes over bang.
Well, since you guys are talking about one punch, I got one final question before we get out of here. I gotta ask it now. Would you rather get punched one time by Mike Tyson or Francis Ngannou?
Man, fuck you. I ain't getting punched by none of them.
Your whole
Fuck
family.
you.
We've been saying this since the '90s. Would you take a Mike Tyson punch for $5 million? I'm like, listen, I wouldn't even take it in my foot because I like to be fast. I'm already the shortest guy. When I do stuff, I like to have my speed. I'm not taking a punch to the foot, and now I got to drag, and I'm like Captain Hook out here. So like,
Someone asked me that question. I was like, yeah, I'm like, how do you answer that question? I'm not getting back from either of them, so it doesn't really matter. Like, like a body shot. I'm like, I got no ribs then. I'm dead. Like, my medical bill costs too much. I'm gonna die. These guys are fucking.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm a little bit crazy. Like if he tried to grab my wife's ass, I would pick a fight with him. He probably knocked me out, but it's just off of respect. You're not gonna do certain things. Like I'm not scared of you. Like I'm not like you're still a human. But at the end of the day, I'm not gonna willingly take a punch from him and say, "Oh yeah, just do whatever you want," and then I'll be okay after. No.
Yo,
Yeah,
I'm do that.
he's gonna have to grab my wife's ass and shit. I'm right with you on that one to make me want to rumbling, but I'm good. I don't want to just freely put my chin.
I'm not fighting fair either. If something like that happens, this is not going to be a boxing match. Let's be clear about that.
I'll probably just bite your ear off.
Like, I'm quick, and I could box, but nah, I'm good.
Mike Tyson, boom. But anyway, yo, that would be something. Yo, we gotta do a podcast on that sometimes, like top 5 theoretical sports things that we would never do, because they're right on the damn list. Like
that might be number 1.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. The jackass thing and punch nuts by Francis Ngannou is pretty, or the slap shot to the nuts. It's pretty bad. I wouldn't do any of them. Yeah, not good. Nah. But anyway, guys, thanks for coming on, Steve. And I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We're going to have my man back in the club. And peace out, y'all.
See you.